I'm Libby Skarin, and I'm the Policy Director at the ACLU of South Dakota. My pronouns are she, her, hers. Right now, we've got two major bills that we're really still watching as the ACLU of South Dakota. The first one is HB 1117. It is Riot Boosting 2.0. Last year, the riot boosting bill passed and we sued, and that law was ultimately found to be unconstitutional. So this year, HB 1117 is an attempt to replace that bill with another attempt to make riot boosting a part of our state law. This is a bill we're really concerned about for a lot of reasons. First and foremost, we know that it's going to chill the free speech of South Dakotans. We're really worried because we know that this bill is crafted as a response to or in anticipation of the building of the Keystone XL pipeline. So the fact that the government is clearly trying to pass a law related to free speech and the First Amendment in anticipation of protests tells us that it's very likely that if this bill becomes law, it will be used to chill the free speech of South Dakotans, and South Dakotans will feel like they have to either decide if they want to stay silent or if they want to risk government retribution for their speech. Another reason we oppose this bill is because we know that the indigenous community and the tribes in our state have not been adequately consulted and worked with in this process. And we know that a law like this, if it becomes law, will target indigenous people, and the burden of that will fall on indigenous people heaviest of all. So we hope that this bill can be stopped. We know that it will be up in the Senate Judiciary Committee next week on Tuesday, March 3rd. One of the other bills that we're still watching very closely is Senate Bill 6. We oppose this bill, and this bill is something that would chip away at presumptive probation. So what Senate Bill 6 would do is it would put certain additional requirements on people who have been convicted of drug crimes in order for them to meet presumptive probation requirements. In practice, that means that folks may be put in dangerous situations. We might be sending people who are struggling with addiction undercover or wearing wires to do controlled drug buys. And if they don't agree to do that for the government, they are facing a prison sentence. They're facing time in a prison cell. Based on the LRC's cost estimate, we know that this bill will cost at least $1 million over 10 years, and the human cost would be huge. So as you may or may not know, our women's prison is full. It's beyond capacity. And if Senate Bill 6 passes, LRC estimates that we may have to either start sending women prisoners to be housed out of state or build a new women's prison. That's a huge problem just on its own, right? But what we really believe at the ACLU of South Dakota is that we cannot incarcerate our way out of addiction. So to incarcerate people who have been committing drug crimes fueled by addiction, locking them up isn't going to solve that problem. So where we're at in session right now, yesterday was the 28th legislative day. We have 37 days total this year. And yesterday was a big day because it was crossover day. I don't know if you've heard that term before, but crossover day is the day that every bill has to get out of its house of origin. So that means that if it's a House bill, it has to pass off the House floor by that day. And if it's a Senate bill, it has to pass off the floor by that day. So a lot of things happened yesterday. A lot of things always happen on crossover day. And right now we have a good sense of what bills have a real chance of becoming law. At this point in session, we've got 9 days of the legislative session left. So if you've been waiting to reach out to legislators, you should absolutely do that right now, especially if there are bills left that you care about. And regardless of whether or not you want a legislator to vote no on a bill or yes on a bill, they should definitely be hearing from you. Now is also a good time to think about the other bills you've been following that have maybe died at this point in the process. And if you're happy about that, send a legislator a thank you. Or if there's a bill that's still alive that you really love, send those legislators who have already voted for that bill a thank you note to let them know that you appreciate the work they're doing and to let them know that as a constituent you're paying attention. This year, it's no surprise that we've seen a lot of bills that were pretty harmful, especially those targeted at the transgender community and the broader LGBTQ and Two-Spirit community. Now, you should of course thank the legislators who have voted against those bills because all of them have died at this point in the process. But you should also remember that if there are legislators who have voted for these bills, or if there are legislators who have brought these bills, you've got a recourse for that, because every 2 years our state legislators are re-elected and they will all be up for election this November. A lot of people have been asking us about the anti-LGBTQ and Two-Spirit bills we've seen this year. They want to know, how did we stop these bills? And truthfully, the way that these bills were able to be stopped was because people showed up. Throughout the legislative process, people were very engaged on these issues. They were paying a lot of attention to these issues, and most importantly, they made their voices heard. So whether that meant showing up for a protest in your city, or going to a Cracker Barrel or a legislative coffee, or even traveling all the way to Pierre for the actual hearings to either testify or show support in that room, that's how those bills were stopped. And that's the kind of energy we need to take in to the legislative process all the time, because people who show up are people who make a difference.